my name is Chad, and welcome back to the next video in the series on JavaScript array methods you need to know as a software engineer. In this video, we'll take a look at the concat and push methods, we'll go through a couple examples, and we'll see how they're both similar and different. Let's get into it. Okay, first up is the concat method. Incredibly common and useful, concat allows you to concatenate or add things together to create a bigger array. In the most basic case, concat can take a single argument, so we'll start off there, and we'll have a new numbers variable and set that equal to the result of numbers dot concat, and we'll just pass in 3 here and log that out. And if we save that, we see 0, 1, 2, and 3. And something important to note here is that the numbers array, the original one up here, is not modified at all by calling concat on it. That means that this concat method is pure, or it doesn't modify any of the constituent values. It just creates something new. So if we log this out, we can see that new numbers is all 4, and then the original numbers array is just 0, 1, 2, and 3. So that covers concatenating an array and one item, but what about multiple items? What about an array of items? Concat has a couple different function signatures. We just saw passing one argument, but we can also pass multiple positional arguments. So we'll get rid of that, and if we pass 4 and 5, this is what we would call positional arguments, separated by commas. So then saving this, now we can see 0 through 5. And if we want to concatenate 2 arrays, concat supports that as well. So we can just go ahead and change this to an array here. And we get the same exact result, 0 through 5. And we can actually take this to the extreme here, and maybe we pass a couple arrays. And we'll save that again. And notice here that we still have one-dimensional or flat resultant array with the numbers 0 through 10. Whoa, okay. Now we're mixing positional arguments and arrays. It's not terribly common to see concat used like this with the array method or with the arrays manually written out. Typically you might be working with an array variable. So let's see an example with that. So I'm just going to paste a couple things down here. So we've got a couple of character arrays, each with first name, last name, and age. We've got some from Nickelodeon, some from Disney, and then we'll have an all characters array. And then I'll just create another character array inline here. And we'll give that the first name of Eric, last name Cartman, and age of 9. And then since this is an array itself, we can actually just call concat right off the end of it. And we'll pass in Nick characters and Disney characters, and we'll log the result of that. Now saving that, we see we have an array of 7 objects, and we start out with Eric in the first position because we're calling concat on this array with Eric in it. And then we see SpongeBob all the way through Reggie. Those were the Nick characters because that's the first array argument here to concat. And then we see Mickey and Minnie, which were part of Disney characters and the second argument to concat. And again, keep in mind that none of these original arrays were actually modified. So since this was an inline array, we can't really log that out, but we can log these two out. So logging those out, we see our Nick characters unchanged with 4 items, and our Disney characters unchanged with 2 items. Cool. So that's concat. Very useful. Next up is the push method. Note that unlike the concat method, push is not pure, meaning it modifies the underlying array. So if you've watched or kept up with the prior videos in this series, every other array method that we've talked about so far is pure in that none of them modify the original array. So push takes all provided arguments and pushes or adds them onto the end. Let's take a look at an example. So we'll just get rid of this here and we'll work with numbers because those are a bit easier. Going back to our array of 0 through 2, if we call numbers.push and pass 3 into it and then log that out, saving that, we get the numbers 0, 1, 2, and 3. So 2 things to notice here. As I mentioned, we get the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, so we see all 4 of them in the result. And second, notice that we logged out the numbers array, the original variable here, not a new variable, and we're not setting the result of push to a new variable. This is the modification of the underlying array that I mentioned in action. When we push 3 onto the numbers array is updated with that element at the end. So while we don't set the result of push to a new variable like we have with the rest of the array methods, push does actually have a return value. We're just not currently using it. And the return value is the new length of the array after all items have been added. So let's see what that looks like. So if we set this equal to, we'll say length, and we'll log that out at the end here. We can see the numbers 0 through 3 and a length of 4. Now I didn't mention this for concat, but it does apply to that method as well. But push isn't limited to just numbers, unless perhaps you're working with TypeScript. But that's a topic for another video. So we can actually pass as many arguments and as many types of arguments as we want to push. So let's take a look at that. We'll say numbers.push, and we'll pass it a string, maybe a boolean and an object. And saving that, actually let me take this and put it on this one here. Okay, saving that, now we get the numbers 0 through 3, the string hello world, a boolean and an object, and then the final length of 7. So notice here how we're passing multiple arguments to push separated by commas. Again, the string, boolean, and object. So this is just like we did with concat before. And each of these so-called positional arguments is added to the end of the array. So of course, in this case, numbers isn't a very accurate name anymore, but I just wanted to show that you can pass anything to push. And like I mentioned, the same applies to concat as well. What about pushing an array instead of individual items? Well, we saw that example with concat. With push, it's a little bit different. Recall with concat, the result was one-dimensional, meaning the array was flat. Let's see what that looks like with push. I'll just get rid of these here, and we'll push the array of 4, 5, and 6 onto the end, and then we'll log that array out. Oops, numbers. We can see that the entire array containing 4, 5, and 6 was pushed onto the end of the original array. So unlike concat, push does not flatten array arguments. It simply adds them to the end of the target array exactly as you pass them. Alright folks, that's all I have for this video. If you liked this video or learned something new, please consider hitting that like button. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel for the rest of the array method videos and others like it in the future. If you want to learn something in particular, definitely leave a comment down below to let me know. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.